It's just not true. We received no advance warning from Iran about this attack.
Okay, and since the attack...
And sorry to interrupt. Sorry. I would just note that this is not the first time that Iran has said things about supposed interactions with the U.S. government and messages it has sent to the U.S. government that have not been true. They have done that a number of times over the last few months, and this is one of those examples.
And you're saying up till now, up till when you took the podium, I guess, there was no sort of diplomatic note from the Iranians explaining their action.
Correct.
Just to follow up on their statement from in the UN, they said that this attack in response to the violations for their sovereignty and also attacks against their nationals. Now, sovereignty, the attack on Ismail Haniya on their territories, do you think this is a legitimate argument for them?
No, of course it's not. If you look at the supposed argument about attacks on their sovereignty, I will say, first of all, that's an event that happened weeks ago, and what's changed in the weeks since then? You've seen the death of the leader of a terrorist organization that Iran sponsors, funds, controls. That's what's changed. And to the extent that any Iranian officials have been killed in the past few days in Lebanon or in Syria, it's because they were meeting with terrorist organizations, meeting with terrorist leaders. And it goes to the point I made a moment ago, which is what you saw Iran to do today was events of a terrorist organization. I don't think it holds water when you look at all the events of the past few weeks that this event had anything to do with Iran's sovereignty. It has to do with the fact that a number of the terrorist organizations that Iran has set up for years as a way to undermine and attack the state of Israel have been weakened. First over the past few months, and then most recently over the past few weeks. It's quite clear that's what they're responding to.
Okay, and one question on Lebanon. I know now everybody is concerned about a wider war, about escalation, but also there are concerns about repercussions in Lebanon. I'm talking about the humanitarian situation, about maybe civil war at some point. So, are you talking to the Lebanese? What are your concerns? What are you doing? Are you talking to the LAF? You've been supporting the LAF, and yesterday you were talking about stability and their role in the stability inside within Lebanon. Who are your partners in Lebanon?
So let me speak to first, you kind of mentioned on the way into the question, the humanitarian situation. We are working to address the humanitarian situation in Lebanon. I would note that the United States has been one of the, if not the largest contributor to humanitarian relief for the Lebanese people going back years, and we will continue to work to provide humanitarian support for the Lebanese people. And we are coordinating with our partners in the region, with international organizations about the shape and nature of those relief efforts, even as we speak. When it comes to the political situation in Lebanon, look, Lebanon has been plagued by instabilities, as I know you know far better than me, for some time. And certainly not the only, but one of the driving factors of Lebanon's instability has been the fact that Hezbollah plays a significant role in the political organization of Lebanon and has held a veto over Lebanon's ability to move forward with a new president, and has held a veto over the security situation of Lebanese civilians. It's because of Hezbollah's refusal to abide with UN Security Council 1701 and actually pull back from the border, that as they were supposed to do, that we're in this situation today. So I think it's too early, obviously, to say how this conflict will shape out in the next few weeks. But what we are going to be working to do is to try to seize this moment and really hope that the Lebanese people can seize this moment against very difficult odds, because there are still a number of Hezbollah fighters who have access to arms and equipment inside Lebanon, but seize this moment to try to establish actual political stability for Lebanon.
Who do you want to do that?
So look, that is ultimately a question for the Lebanese people to answer, not for the United States to answer. But when you see the degradation of Hezbollah inside Lebanon, which has been such a destabilizing force to the country, hopefully, and you can't predict that it's going to happen, but hopefully that's an opportunity for other political actors in Lebanon to step forward. Yeah.
Matt, I mean, in your answer to Matt, and also during this 12 months, you've been always saying that your main goal in this conflict is not for it to spread to a regional war. And I believe now we are maybe one step further from it, a regional war. But do you think that your way of trying to contain it and through your diplomatic means by drawing boundaries and lines to Israel, that if you cross this will escalate into this war or that war, and the Israeli prime ministers keep crossing those lines, keeps escalating in the region, whether it is in Gaza with the Philadelphia corridor or in Lebanon? First, you advised against major operation in Lebanon. It happened. You advised against ground incursions in Lebanon. It happened. And now we reached to this point. Do you think that he's dragging the United States into a regional war, as he was saying that he wants to do that for a long time now?
So let me say a couple things about this. First, it is absolutely true that Israel makes its own decisions about its security and about its path forward in the region. And that's true about Israel, but it's true about every other country in the region. The United States offers its advice, it offers its support, it offers its deterrence capabilities, it offers its diplomatic capabilities to our partners. But ultimately, our partners and our allies have to make their own decisions about their future. And the United States has to make its own decisions about our national interests. And I know that's what the state of Israel does and what they will continue to do. And we will continue to make our own decisions about our national interests. And the decisions that we have made that we will continue to stand by and continue to pursue is to use our diplomacy and deterrence to try and avert a regional war. We're going to continue to do that. But it's always been true that there are a number of other players in the region besides the United States. It's Israel, it's terrorist organizations, there are other countries in the region, all of whom have agency in this question. And what we will continue to do is use our diplomacy, use our deterrence to try to achieve the best outcome possible.
But don't you see that maybe you are enabling the Israelis to seek, when you say, their own interest in their own way of thinking, by risking or going against your interest as the United States of going toward a regional war?
So they are going to make their decisions. We are going to make decisions about our interests. But if you look at the questions that have been before us the past few days and the questions that got us to where we are today, we're here responding to an Iranian attack that we, along with Israel primarily, were successfully defeat, that Iran launched because Israel has taken out the leaders of a terrorist organization. And that's something we support them doing. So while there are certainly steps that Israel takes with which we do not agree, and we have been quite clear about that, we do support them taking out the leaders of a terrorist organization. We support them degrading a terrorist organization. Those are steps that the United States would take as well. Those are steps that Arab countries in the region would take. Doesn't mean we always agree with the way that they do it, but we fully recognize their right to do it, and we're going to continue to have conversations with them about the best way forward.
My last question is just, there's some statements coming from Tehran that they waited so long after Haniya was assassinated in Tehran because they received messages from the United States that something will happen regarding the ceasefire in Gaza, and this maybe will give them a way of not responding to Israel, and this didn't happen. Did you give them this message?
So we made clear through a number of diplomatic channels. I'm not going to talk about our direct communications with Iran, as I never do, but we did make clear through a number of diplomatic channels that the situation in the region was very tense and that the ceasefire talks were at a very delicate nature, and Iran should not do anything to upset those talks. Now, what's happened in the meantime? Obviously, there's been a lot of water under the bridge since that date. But if you look at what's happened in the past few weeks, it has been Iran's client terrorist organization that has been the impediment to reaching a ceasefire agreement, which is not to say that there have not been times in which Israel has made reaching an agreement more difficult. They absolutely have. And we have been trying to work through those objections as well. But in the past few weeks, it's the terrorist organization that Iran supports that has refused to come to the table to talk about how to get a final agreement. So, Saeed.
Thank you. You're saying that Hamas has rejected or Hamas is obstinate about the ceasefire talks. I just want to understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so it is. So to be clear, I went through some of this yesterday's site, and I know you were out. Everybody's allowed.
Sorry about that.
And no, everybody's allowed a day off. So obviously, this has been a long and winding road trying to get an agreement over the finish line. If you look at the events since the president put forward a public proposal on May 31st, and then later, I think it was in August, where he presented a bridging proposal to both parties that narrowed the differences down to a final few provisions that we were trying to work through. Obviously, there were things where we wanted to see Israel make tough decisions, and there were places we wanted to see Hamas make tough decisions. And we thought we had been making progress on narrowing those differences and having a proposal that would bridge the final differences between the two parties. And then in the past few weeks, Hamas just stopped engaging with the mediators, with Egypt and Qatar. So right now, which is not to say that there aren't, as I said in response to one of the other questions, not to say that Israel, if we can get back on track, doesn't have difficult decisions to make. They will have difficult decisions to make, and we will be pushing them to make those difficult decisions. But right now, and for the past few weeks, it's been Hamas being unwilling to engage in any meaningful way with the mediators that has kept us from moving towards an agreement.
But a couple of things.
Has Israel engaged in a meaningful way
We
in
have
the
been
last
engaged.
week?
We have been engaging. So
They never responded when you guys put forth that proposal for a 21-day ceasefire.
So let's keep things separate. We're talking about the ceasefire proposal in Gaza right now. They have been engaging with us on a meaningful way. I can talk about that. When side's I can come back and talk about that.
That's what you're
we're talking about the proposal in Gaza.
Just to follow up, although Hamas did accept the proposal as was suggested by the president on May 31. They accepted it.
Just to be clear, before you go on your question,
in fact, they keep saying,
it's not accurate.
They keep saying we accepted wholly.
I know they didn't.
Okay.
I can tell you, having looked at the text of the original proposal and looked at the text of the response, they accepted some provisions and proposed changes to others. That's not an acceptance. That is a negotiation.
Yeah, but a couple of things on this point. I mean, you mentioned that Israel has a right to go after terrorist leaders and kill them and so on. Israel has been doing this for decades. They've killed scores of Palestinian leaders, scores of Lebanese leaders, and so on over the years. Has that in any way really lessened the conflict, resolved the issue, brought peace to the region, arrived at resolution of the conflict?
There is
do you believe? Do you believe that what Israel is doing now is basically makes it safer?
There has been a long history of violence in the Middle East. Decades and decades of violence. And you have heard the Secretary talk about one of the things we would like to accomplish is to break that cycle of violence and ultimately reach resolutions to establish an independent Palestinian state, which of course is the absence of which fuels much of the insecurity in the region. We would like to see Israel normalize its relationships with its neighbors. But in the meantime, that does not mean that Israel should not defend itself against terrorists that are committed on killing its civilians and destroying its state. Any country would do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me ask you, just shift gears on the aid issue. ProPublica published a report saying that Israel deliberately blocked humanitarian aid to Gaza, and there were two U.S. government bodies that told that to the Secretary of State, but he basically rejected it. And in fact, he told Congress that that in fact Israel was allowing aid to go in. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I will, and I'm glad you asked me this question because I think there.
मैथ्यू मिलर की ब्रीफिंग आप इस वक्त सुन रहे हैं और वो सहाफियों के सवालों का जवाब दे रहे हैं। ईरान ने जंगी जुनून में मुब्तला इसराइल पर मिसाइलों की बारिश कर दी। तल अवीव समेत इसराइल के मुख्तलिफ शहर सायरन और धमाकों से गूंज उठे। मुल्क भर में शहरियों को महफूज मकामात पर छुपने की हिदायत जारी कर दी गई। अमेरिका इसराइल के दिफा के लिए मैदान में आ गया। सदर बाइडेन ने कहा है अमेरिका इसराइल का हर सूरत में दिफा करेगा। इसराइली फौज का कहना है हमले में जानी नुकसान हुआ है। दिफाई निजाम ने बहुत से ईरानी मिसाइलों को मार गिराया।